little background information is I actually had the game pre-ordered and I waited to get it when all the reviews came out. It had a lot of negativity surrounding it, especially like bugs and glitches and things of that nature. Just really wasn't working on the last gen consoles. And as far as I understand it, it was being made for the next gen consoles, which are now current generation, but they were pressured by the studio to release it on the last generation platforms as well, just so they can get the game out to as many people at launch as possible. This really hurt the game because like it wasn't optimized for those older generations and consoles. And when I found all this out, I decided to hold off on the game. Sufficient to say that like we all know what happened thereafter. It got removed from the PlayStation Store. It's the first time Sony has been doing refunds on this scale, and it was off the PlayStation Store for about 8 or 9 months. They have since allowed it back on the store last week, and I decided to go ahead then and purchase the game. I bought it physically. There is no PlayStation 5 version as of yet, so this review is of the PlayStation 4 on a PlayStation 5. Sony actually says in their descriptions on the PlayStation Store that like if you have a base model PS4, you shouldn't buy this game. This should be mainly only enjoyed if you have a PlayStation 4 Pro or PlayStation 5. So I was playing on the 5. I do have a PS4 base model as well. I can test it on that later if you want a different review on that. But I've seen pretty much all hell break loose on those videos for that. So we're going to start this off with, do I regret my purchase? I have to say no. I literally bought it though for $20 brand new at Best Buy. It's on sale right now, which I actually recommend if you do want to try the game out, getting it now at Best Buy while it's on sale for $20. Because once the PlayStation 5 version and Xbox Series X version, I think it might be coming out for, once those versions come out in this year, that PlayStation 4 price is going to shoot right up because you can free upgrade. So if you have a copy of the PS4 on disc physically, you can just upgrade it for free like so many other games that they're actually letting you do that with right now, which I think is actually a really good thing. But the price of the PS4 and last generation games that actually allow you to do that, we're going to see kind of a fluctuation with like price staying high. So I recommend jumping in there and getting it now while it's cheap, because the game is fun to play, especially even if you don't have a PS5 yet, or if you're not playing on a PlayStation 4 Pro. I do recommend the game. But that'll come in the third part, and I'll tell you my reasons why. The first part that I wanted to talk about is let's get the negatives out of the way first. I've been playing about over 30 plus hours on PlayStation 5, and I have seen my fair share of glitches already. Whether it's major clipping issues, like just talking to a person who's giving you a mission and, let's talk about like Evelyn, maybe like her purse was like clipping through the middle of her wrist during the entire conversation. It was extremely distracting and took away from that. And there was just a little bunch of cinematic stuff like that, like Jackie going off to, you are supposed to follow him, and he just like literally clips through the wall and like walks through all of these lockers and stuff's flying everywhere like there's a tornado in the room. That was pretty hilarious, honestly. I haven't had too many really gameplay glitches that were affecting the functionality of the game. There was one time where I was following the map and it drove me like literally right off a bridge. There was like this end pass where you're supposed to turn either way, and it doesn't have you actually turning. Like the GPS that you're following on the bike literally said to go across it. So I literally like flew off this bridge and just like landed in the middle of the water. Luckily, you can swim, so it didn't affect me too much, and I was able to recall my bike later, but I thought that was pretty hilarious. There's been other glitches as well when it comes to like hitboxes, which I don't really like getting straight up headshots and I'm not registering as headshots. That's always annoying. Changing the radio stations is really annoying because you'll have a mission queued up and you have the GPS going towards that mission, and sometimes if you just go into the menu, which going to a menu to change the radio station is ridiculous. Usually you can use one of the directional pads for this in other third person games such as like GTA. I really wish they went with something like that but as of now you have to hold down R1 and it brings up a whole other menu of the stations, and you have to manually go through and press X to play them if you want to use that station. I haven't found any way to bring it up on the quick. And that's just what they direct you to do, and that's what I've been doing. But when you do this and you go back to your mission, the GPS like disappears, and you have to like literally abandon the mission and then like re-accept the mission just to get that GPS marker to pop back up. That is one probably huge defect that I've noticed thus far. And again, I am playing on the PlayStation 5. There has been times where I'm trying to let's say talk to an NPC or talk to somebody, or I'm getting a mission from somebody, and like NPCs will just start randomly talking to you, and there's people talking over each other. If you hit a button command press, like you have to answer with a square button, and even if you answer right away, sometimes they'll ignore what you're saying and they'll just talk over your talking, like you didn't even have the press input there. That's kind of annoying. There's other things too, such as like you picking up a weapon and you're supposed to hold triangle to auto equip it and press square to pick it up. Sometimes I'll press square just to pick it up and it'll auto equip it anyway, which can be a pain, especially when you're trying to manage all that kind of inventory. It looks like there's a lot to pick up in the world, but the vast majority of the things that you'll see and encounter is junk, which can be broken down for parts and sold, but it's just hard when you're running a middle through a mission and you're trying to pick up stuff that enemies are dropping, and you end up grabbing a bunch of like soda cans and potato chips and things of that nature, as opposed to actually getting the weapons that were dropped and any kind of eddies that were left behind as well. But again, none of that stuff really affects the gameplay. The GPS has been like thus far the worst part of that, besides any visual glitches or bugs. Now, one negative connotation I have towards the game that I've noticed is Night City doesn't feel alive. You'll go through vast swaths and stretches of area where there's not a soul to be seen in sight, and then you'll get to the big city areas and you'll still have maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 people on screen, and you'll get a lot of cloned characters. So like people that are exactly the same NPCs like walking around, and it kind of takes you out of it. The immersion for me is like the best factor, and I want to really experience Night City as if like I were there. I just don't get that feel with it. I do have fun with the game, but that'll come in the positives. But to round more of the negative stuff up, I would also like to say the game touted to have a lot more functionality than it actually does. Like romancing is like a big factor in the game. Like you find a partner, and like of course there's like sex scenes and stuff, but I mean, you're supposed to be able to choose like who helps you on the final mission and pairs with you pretty much. And I thought this was going to be like maybe a Fire Emblem thing where like you get to just like romance them, and then like you get to have a person that you're with. But whether you choose what gender you have one girl that you can romance and one guy. So if you're role playing and you want to do different roles, you have two options. If you're trying to create yourself, you have pretty much like one option, which is whatever you're trying to go for. Nothing wrong with that, but I just mean there's not very many options. So for example, for me, I created myself in the game. So the only options that the male V has to mate with is this one dude named like Kenny, who's like part of the rock band that's with Keanu Reeves. I think they're called the Samurai. And then there's also Padam, who is part of this like kind of motorcycle group-ish thing. There's no other options between that. So like, because if you like Judy, she's only an option if you choose the female V. So you really don't have any options. I don't even know why they made it an option thing. And it's not like you can really do anything or say anything to dismay them from falling for you, regardless who you choose. The only way that you get to the point of the actual choice is when you get to a certain part in the game, you need to call somebody to come help you who you trust, and you either call the guy or you call the girl, and that's the person that you end up staying with. That's just how that works. I thought there was going to be a little bit more involved with that, and it was touted and promoted as being such. Another thing I want to say, if you want to have some fun, quote unquote, like you go to like the debauchery area of like where like all the crazy nightlife stuff happens, where you're having all the nighttime fun kind of thing, and there's literally only like 3 prostitutes in the entire like area, and I haven't seen any outside of the rest of the game. There's people that present themselves that way, and they will approach you and talk to you, but it's not like you can do anything with them or have any kind of conversation. They say their one-liner that they're supposed to say, and then they just like leave. They just like peace out. The driving is another thing that I kind of had to get used to because I'm an avid racing game fan, and even games that like Rockstar's made, like Midnight Club, handles like really well with the cars and things of that nature. But in Cyberpunk, the cars feel extremely floaty, I would like to say. Turning with any kind of precision is extremely hard. Now, the cars vary from different car to different car, but most of the cars that I've used, you have to pretty much like slam on the brake and the e-brake just to make a sharp turn. There's no like way to actually turn, because if you're turning just regularly driving the car by itself, you'll literally just like veer off into a wall no matter how hard you're holding that analog stick to turn that direction. That's another thing that like I really did not enjoy, because some of the missions that you're getting are like 3 kilometers away from you and you're not walking that distance. Like it's insane. So you'll literally have to drive to that distance. And again, this might not be a big thing if you want to walk around and explore the world, but you don't really want to do that, because when you're exploring the world, there's nothing to see. Like there either is like desert with like nothing and there's nobody there. And by the way, they tout this whole like scanning thing, right? You get this like special eye in the beginning of the game, and you're supposed to be able to scan people to be like, do they have a bounty, or like, can you attack them, or like, will they have good loot or whatever. This sounds great in practice. Now, how it works in functionality is like anybody that's an enemy type on the map is going to show up automatically with a marker above their head, so you don't even need to scan them. You just like go for the gusto and throw a grenade and catch them off guard and mow them down, and like literally that's it. You better hope there's no bystanders around though, because if you hit one of the bystanders, then you got the cops to come after you. Which that has been one thing that's been improved on. I've seen, especially in like Angry Joe's video game streams and stuff like that, where like cops have like clipped through the walls or shown up like immediately. I think the response time has actually been like reallocated to being a little bit better within the new algorithm, and it does work better. But they don't pursue you past like any safe space. So like if you go into a safe space, like you're automatically gone. I haven't really noticed the wanted system like even mattering in that nature. You can literally walk past the same cops that were chasing you in like a minute, and they won't. It's like they never saw you before in their life. So that's maybe a blessing and a curse at the same time. But I don't want to be like too negative on that kind of stuff. Like I said, this is just the first part of the video is going to be about the negativity things, because I'm going to make it its own separate video throughout the week. But beyond that, there's issues with like characterization options. So when you're having a conversation with somebody in this game, you have different options depending on what class you choose. From what I've understood, the options don't mean anything. They're clearly tacked on last minute, because if you say something, it really doesn't change the flow of the conversation. It just eliminates that part, and then you go on to say the next part. There's been times where I just completely ignored them because I thought, oh, maybe that's too rude, or I'm trying to do this with this person. It's not a matter. You can say whatever you want. The story's going to go wherever it wants. It's a lot more linear than it lets on to be. It's definitely not like as open-ended RPG as it would make itself out to be. It is definitely linear. Getting from point A to point B can be a hassle unless you're like auto-traveling or using taxis. If you're like driving by yourself, because of the way the controls handle. Now, I feel like the bikes are probably your best option to go with. The bikes are a lot more precise when it comes to turning and adjusting for speed, avoiding damage. If you're in a car, it's like a free-for-all. But I don't want to harp too much on this stuff. Maybe I can come up with some like another list like later about things that I don't like about the game. One thing I always never like about these kind of RPG systems is your clothing. So the clothing is based purely on like stats and defense level and stuff like that, and you'll just be looking ridiculous half the time because you're just trying to equip the stuff that has the best stats, not necessarily what your character would like to wear. So you'll be wearing some goofy stuff half the time, so it's a good thing you can't see your character unless you have the option to actually go up to a mirror and select look inside the mirror, which why it doesn't have like auto reflection is beyond me, but that's just another thing, I guess. There is third person mode that you can activate, but it's only when driving. So when you're in a vehicle, you have to press the right directional stick and you actually will enter third person mode, which is very good for me because I don't like driving in first person mode like ever. So that actually helps out when you are traversing those extra long distances that you need to cover in order to get to the next mission. But that's about it for the negativity.
And thank you.